Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to All Praise Picks. Today we're looking at the NFL. It's the last week of the NFL on Sunday, and we have the Los Angeles Chargers traveling to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. So currently, the Chargers are 10-6, which is second place in the AFC West, and the Raiders are 14-12, which is fourth place in the AFC West. So really, the Chargers have a lot to play for in this game. Because the Steelers lost yesterday to the Bengals, the Chargers can secure the 5 seed with a win over the Raiders, and the 5 seed is a more desirable path through the AFC playoff picture because the Chargers would face the Houston Texans as opposed to the Baltimore Ravens, who completely destroyed the Browns yesterday. So I do lean towards the Chargers winning this game, and I think that there is also an incentive for the Raiders to lose this game. They could get a better draft pick if they lose this game, and it would probably be like a top 5 draft pick for them. But in this video, I have a few bets on BetMGM. As always, I'll break down the lines, give you my thoughts, and hopefully if you tap in, we can all win. So before I get into the bets, I do want to mention that I do have a new BetMGM promo as well as the Bet365 bonus promo that I mentioned before in previous videos. More info about those promos are in the YouTube description, but if you're able in the states that are highlighted in the BetMGM and Bet365 maps, you could get a potential bonus of $155 total, 100 being on BetMGM and 55 on Bet365. So check out the YouTube description if you're interested and tap in. Also, before I get into the parlays for this video, be sure to like and comment on my video as well as share and subscribe to my channel. Really just do this for the enjoyment of sports investments as well as just the enjoyments of watching sports overall. And hopefully the research that I provide is helpful. And if you do think it is helpful, just be sure to show your support. Thank you. So now getting into the parlays for this video. Starting off with J.K. Dobbins and Ladd McConkey, I do think that they are in pretty good shape to have good games. So at plus 125 with the parlay on the left side, I put half a unit on that one, and I have J.K. Dobbins for over 50 rushing yards, Ladd McConkey for over 50 receiving yards, the Chargers to score over 17 points, as well as the Chargers to win the first half of the game. And then on the parlay on the right side, it's pretty much the same at plus 105. It's just for the Chargers to win the game rather than to win the first half. And like I mentioned, I do like their chances of winning the game, and I think that if they get to a hot start, they probably will win the first half as well. So looking at J.K. Dobbins, he just recently returned from injury in their game versus New England. But what I like to see was that he immediately returned to his regular workload. He had 19 carries for 76 rushing yards as well as a touchdown. And in his previous game when he returned from injury against Denver on October 13th, he had 25 carries for 96 yards and a touchdown. So I do think that there is consistency there, and he could be in store for another great game with the playoff implications of this game. And with the Raiders likely wanting to lose to secure a better draft pick, it'll probably lead to J.K. Dobbins getting more carries into the second half of the game. And he had a pretty good game previously versus the Raiders. He had 10 rushes for 135 rushing yards as well as a touchdown, and he did have a long run of 61 yards. So when you factor out that long run, he still went over 70 yards in the game. And I think that he could be in store for another good game, especially because Gus Edwards, their number 2 running back, is not playing in this game. So that'll just lead to more carries and more opportunities for J.K. Dobbins to have over 50 rushing yards. I also like Ladd McConkey for over 50 receiving yards. He's had an increased offensive involvement over the past 5 weeks, and Joshua Palmer, another wide receiver for the Chargers, is out of this game, which will lead to McConkey and Quentin Johnson to be Justin Herbert's primary targets. And the last time these two teams played, he had the most targets on the team with 7, and he came down with 5 receptions for 39 yards and a touchdown. And because he's been the main focal point of the offense lately, I do think that that'll continue. And it'll probably be the focal point of the offense early in the game with J.K. Dobbins assaulting the game away in the second half. Taking a deeper look at Ladd McConkey in his previous games, he's gone over 50 yards in his last 6 games and has had at least 5 receptions in those games. And he's also scored 3 touchdowns over the 6-game span. And what I like to see is that he's getting involvement all over the field. He's had long receptions of at least 20 yards in each game, and I do think that he has a good chance of having a high target share in this game, as well as a couple long receptions, which could carry him over the 50 receiving yards. I also like the Chargers to score 17 points. So in the previous game versus the New England Patriots, I think they dropped like 40 points on them, and that was a pretty good statement game for the Chargers and their offense. It really showed that both sides of the offense is coming together in terms of their passing game and rushing game. And I think that with a defense as good as the Chargers, they probably will have a lot of opportunities to score in the game, whether that be off of just short fields or just opportunities coming from the Raiders punching the ball to them. So I do like the chances for 17 points, which would be like 2 touchdowns and a field goal. And as I mentioned before, I do like the Chargers to win the game, and I do think that if they get to a hot start, they probably will win the first half of the game. So I just split the difference between these two parlays, putting a half a unit on them to win the first half, as well as half a unit for them to win the game. So at plus 125, if you invest 1 unit on that parlay on the left side, you would have 125% return on investment. And at plus 105, if you invest 1 unit on the parlay on the right side, you would have 105% return on investment. Per usual, have bankroll consciousness and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets if you do decide to place it with me. Now looking at the next parlays that I have, at plus 120 and plus 135, these are two pretty similar parlays as well. The only difference is similar to the last parlays. I have the Chargers to win the game in the parlay at plus 120, as well as to win the first half at plus 135. But I also have Justin Herbert for over 2 passing touchdowns in the game, and the Raiders to score under 28.5 points. I really do think that if the Chargers get to a hot start, it's probably because Justin Herbert is passing the ball down the field, and uh, the Raiders' defense overall just is not that good. Um, the Raiders give up the seventh most passing touchdowns this season to the quarterback position, and they also are poor against defending the tight end position and pretty bad against defending running backs, which would just lead to the Chargers being able to move the ball down the field. And I think that um, Justin Herbert has had a great increase in his pass attempts recently. And while I don't think that he will have as many pass attempts as he's had recently, I think he's gone over 30 pass attempts in his last 4 games. Um, he may just be passing the ball a lot in the first half of the game, which will lead to 2 passing touchdowns. He's also had over 2 passing touchdowns in his last 3 games and had 3 passing touchdowns versus New England in his previous game. So I do like his chances for over 2 passing touchdowns in this game. Now focusing on the Raiders to score under 20.5 points, I'm really just making on the Chargers defense playing very well. They played very well versus the Patriots, and I think that they could do the same versus the Raiders, a team that is kind of in the same developmental mode as the Patriots. And I really find it hard to believe that the Raiders would score over 4 touchdowns in this game, and we'll probably lean towards taking a lot of field goals rather than scoring touchdowns because of the incentive that they have to lose the game. And honestly, it's pretty hard to lose a game if you're scoring a lot of points. So at plus 120 and plus 135, I put half a unit on both these parlays as well to split the difference between the Chargers winning the first half as well as to win the game. But at plus 120, if you invest 1 unit on that parlay, it'd be 120% return on investment. And at plus 135, if you invest 1 unit on that parlay, it'd be 135% on investment. Per usual, just have bankroll consciousness, understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets if you do decide to place it with me. Now these next two parlays are focused on McConkey and J.K. Dobbins, who I spoke upon before, but also I added Jacoby Myers, wide receiver for the Raiders, to have over 50 yards. So at plus 160, I have Lad McConkey for over 50 receiving yards, Jacoby Myers for over 50 receiving yards, J.K. Dobbins for over 50 rushing and receiving yards total, and then the game to go under 51 points. And then on the right side at plus 115, the first 3 legs are the exact same, and then I just have the Raiders to score under 28.5 points. So focusing on Jacoby Myers, he has been involved with the offense more, especially since Devontae Adams was traded to the New York Jets. And when you take a look at the Chargers secondary, their weakness is in defending wide receivers. They give up the 17th most receiving yards, the 24th most receiving touchdowns, the 22nd most receiving yards or receptions over 20 yards, as well as the 23rd most receptions over 40 yards to the wide receiver position. And the Chargers are pretty good at defending the tight end position. So I was considering whether I went to bet on Jacoby Myers or Brock Bowers. But when you look at the Chargers versus tight ends this year, they give up the 11th fewest receiving yards to the tight end position. They're number one in defending the tight end position when it comes to scoring touchdowns, 17th in terms of receptions. And they give up the third fewest receiving yards over 20 yards and the first, or at least like the fewest receiving yards over 40 yards to the tight end position. So they're pretty good at defending tight ends, and I think that Brock Bowers, even though he's had a phenomenal season, setting a lot of records, I think he set the most records for catches by a Raider in a season, as well as the NFL rookie record for receptions, as well as the most receiving yards by a rookie tight end in the entire NFL history. I think that when you have a guy that's breaking so many records, he is bound to be productive in the offense, but I do think that a lot of attention will be garnered to him, which will lead to Jacoby Myers having one-on-one coverage as well as opportunities to have big plays. Also looking at Jacoby Myers' recent game logs, he's gone over 50 receiving yards in 4 out of his last 5 games. And in the one game that he didn't, he only had 2 receptions for 41 yards versus Jacksonville. But I do think that if he continues to have his involvement with the offense stay consistent, he should have a good chance for over 50 receiving yards. In the game that he's had over 50 receiving yards in the past 5 games, he's had at least 5 receptions in each of those games. So I do think that if he has the targets and is able to catch the ball, he should be able to go over 50 receiving yards. I also like this game to go under 51 points, as well as the Raiders to go under 28.5 points, like I mentioned before. I just think that this would probably be more of a defensive game than the Patriots game was for the Chargers, and it's kind of like a regression to the mean for the Chargers offense, where I do think that it's a good offense and a somewhat balanced offense. I don't think that they're an offense that could score 40 points in back-to-back games, and I think that this game will probably go under 51 points. But I also don't think that the Raiders will contribute a lot, so I'd like them to go under 28.5 points. So at plus 116, if you invest 1 unit on this parlay, you have 160% return on investment. And then at plus 135, if you invest 1 unit on that parlay, you have 115% return on investment. I put a little bit more on the plus 115 one because I do lean towards the Raiders not being able to score rather than the Chargers and Raiders not being able to score in this game. And I would just have bankroll management, understand your finances when it's time to place these bets if you do decide to place it with me. So these are 2 long shot parlays that I have in this game at plus 165 and plus 575. It's kind of like an accumulation of what I think will happen in the game. So focusing on the parlay at plus 625, I have Aiden O'Connell for over 200 passing yards, as well as Brock Bowers for over 50 receiving yards, and then Justin Herbert for over 200 passing yards, and Ladd McConkey for over 50 receiving yards, as well as Daniel Carlson, who's the kicker for the Las Vegas Raiders, for over 7 kicking points. The Raiders keep the game close, but the Chargers to win the first half, and then the Chargers to win the game. So, starting with Aiden O'Connell and 200 passing yards, I think that because the Raiders are kind of in a position where they're going to draft a quarterback in the draft coming up in April, they'll just let Aiden O'Connell play out his last game, and as long as he completes the game, I think that he'll play a more riskier offensive game in terms of taking a lot of shots down the field and a lot of pass attempts, which will probably lead to have over 200 passing yards. And like I mentioned, the Chargers secondary is the weak point of the defense, especially when it comes to wide receivers. And while the Chargers are good at defending the tight end position, I think that Brock Bowers will probably get a decent amount of targets, which will lead to him having over 50 receiving yards. And I lean towards Brock Bowers to have over 50 receiving yards rather than for him to have 8 catches, just because if there's a lot of attention towards Brock Bowers, he probably isn't going to get easy receptions. But I do think that when the ball is in his hands, he can make big plays. Also took Justin Herbert for over 200 passing yards and Ladd McConkey for over 50 receiving yards. And I did this because I think if the game is close, Herbert may have to play the entire game. And he's gone over 280 passing yards in his last 2 games. And like I mentioned before, he has gone over 30 pass attempts in his last 4 games. And he's reached 200 passing yards in 3 out of those 4 games. And in the one game that he didn't, he had 195 passing yards, which was just 5 yards short of 200 yards passing. And I just think that if the game is close, he probably will be passing the ball. But I don't expect the game to be super close, which is why I just took the Raiders at plus 17, essentially not to lose the game by more than 17 points. But I think that if the Raiders are trying to lose this game, they'll probably settle for field goals more often than trying to score touchdowns, which will lead to Daniel Carlson having opportunities for field goals. And if he makes 2 field goals and the Raiders score 1 touchdown and he makes extra point, that's 7 kicking points right there. But I could see him making like 3 field goals in this game for 9 kicking points. And I also mentioned that I like the Chargers to win the game in the first half. So I split the difference between these 2 parlays and put a little bit more in the parlay at plus 575 just because of the lower odds. But I do like both these parlays, and they are long shot parlays, so just have bankroll management, understanding your finances when it's time to place these bets if you do decide to place it with me. So as I mentioned at the top of the video, I have 2 promos for BetMGM as well as Bet365. Info about those promos are in the description, and if you're in the eligible states, you could have a $150 bonus added to your account with a small deposit. So those are parlays that I have for this Chargers versus Raiders matchup. Be sure to like and comment on the video, as well as share and subscribe to my channel. And stay tuned for more NBA and NFL videos coming out later this week. And until next time, peace.